Hello? Hello, hello? Hello? Well, good evening, everybody. It's almost time to start. I will just give people a couple of minutes to sign on. Let me just check on one thing. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this webinar, to this talk tonight about a purpose-driven future and in what way it will be accelerated into that purposeful future. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about what could be a future economy. What is the new economy? And I call it the X economy. We are now in a completely shift in our society. What happened centuries ago with the e-Renaissance, today it is the Renaissance on steroids. I call it the Renaissance, sorry. So there is a little bit of a delay in the slide show, this change of the slide. So I hope somehow that it will be synchronized. So I will try to jump already to the next slide and talking about the slide before. Yeah, I regret it. I don't know why that is happening, but in general, the internet connection here in Dubai, where I am at the moment, is not really 100%. So sorry for that. So a little bit of my history, and so I'm working and I live here in Dubai. I started a company a year ago, and this company is focusing on everything around exponential technologies, exponential transformation, and we are waving that in all kind of dynamics around how companies are working, how companies are doing, and also trying to see what is happening in our economy. So today, what I'm going to do is trying to bring a couple of different paradigms together to talk about a potential new model for our economy. And why that is important is that I show you a couple of things why the current economy is not working anymore. And our coronavirus attack on our planet showed us the vulnerability of our economy. So I think there is really a problem with the streaming. Excuse me, I will check what is going on. Just give me a minute. Well, I think that I have to disappoint a lot of people. Because it's not really working. So I have a, if you can hear me, I have a proposal. I can tape this presentation, and through the organization, I can let them send you the presentation, or you get access to that presentation. So I have no idea what the problem is, but somehow it is just not streaming well enough. For people who probably can hear it, I'm just, and I don't see any comments so far. So I really don't know what to do. So let me just try. A couple of people can hear me, so I'm just going on and see where we are ending up. And if it is not improving, then what I said is that I will stream it, or that I will tape it, and I will upload a link that you can download and watch it yourself at a later moment. So what we have to do in this current era where we are is that we have to imagine, we have to trust that imagination is way more than knowledge. Knowledge is very limited, and I will show you a lot of examples why knowledge is so limited. And imagination encircles the complete world. This is the corona as a meteorite attacking our planet. And in our planet, we have no clue how to deal with it. And that led to big, huge confusions. This led to a lot of problems in our economy, but also a lot of people suffering from the corona health-wise, and a lot of people died. But my topic of tonight is that our economy, how we build it, is really demonstrating the coronavirus, is demonstrating our vulnerabilities. We are facing an exponential crisis, and that means that we also need an exponential response on that. And we have to engage better with the future. We have to look into the future, what is probably going to change. We can develop scenarios, and as we speak, we are working on several scenarios, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and up to 2 years. And there's a lot of things that we think that will change, and better to jump on that bandwagon to adapt to those changes. And of course, there are a lot of ways to look at reality. But if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. Wayne Dyer, a brilliant quote, and you see in this little picture here that we do have one reality that we probably don't know, but every part of it that we are looking at it is somehow true, including our economy. A lot of people have worked over that for ages to build up a way of looking at the economy. But that can be changed. So an exponential change, what we see after this coronavirus really was spreading out, people started to think about what will be the world after the coronavirus, after this pandemic. And people are talking, and McKinsey's, for instance, about the next normal. And I think the next normal is not right. There is no normal. And why a next normal? A normal is something that can be predicted, that can be lived with in the normal, that we are not fearing. Or other people are talking about a great reset. Well, a reset, if you reset something, for instance your computer, you are going back to what it was. So, and then if it is a great reset, then I think that we are really on a wrong pathway. Reset is going back to what it was. Think about changing or resetting your computer. So my idea now is to come up with the great abnormal. We don't know exactly what will happen, and we have to deal with all the changes all the time. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is the slowest day for the rest of your life. So let's go now a little bit tapping into what economics is. What are we talking about? Firstly, it is a social science, and it is about production and distribution and consumption of goods and services. So this science studies how we are doing business, governance, etc. But also how we are satisfying needs and wants. And here is the interesting thing in red. It is trying. This science is over years trying to organize and to coordinate efforts to achieve maximum output. And the interesting thing that we see here is should organize. So now there is a science, between brackets, that is telling us, because it is science, that things have to be organized in a certain way. And if you don't comply to that, most likely you are wrong. Not the science, but you are. And how we build it up is all revolving around wealth. And that is what we see here. Massive buildings that we are building just to show off. Big yachts to show off. It doesn't add any value on what we are trying to do on this planet. And at what costs? At what cost? And you see here, people are hungry. And what we are doing at the same time, we are spraying milk over the meadows. There is so much overshoot on food that we have that we completely waste. Whereas at the other side of the world, a lot of people are hungry. And that has to be changed. And one of the most important things why we built the economy as we did is based on this thing, GDP. GDP, gross domestic product, is a kind of your national income of a country. And except that the GDP is something that we are trying to build our predictions on, our go back. It's really difficult to see how much delay is in there. But anyway, so the GDP is our leading measure of growth of an economy. And that has been developed some 7 decades ago, and we are still following these principles. To give you a little bit of an insight here, is that I skipped this one because the delay is too big, excuse me for that. I'm going to the next now, this slide. So the GDP is just a little bit of what is really going on in our world to measure progress, to measure wealth, to measure whether we are growing with whatever. it's not really clear what that growth curve means, and what growth means in this case. It excludes our economic well-being, leisure, wealth, but also non-market activities, or the living conditions here that you see in the environment, in health, inequality, which is a big, huge problem, and education. If you don't include those in your GDP or whatever measurements, you are missing a lot. And we have to change that to get a better, balanced idea about what is going on in our society. The next slide, when it's building up on your side, is what you see here. This is the magic curve. This thing is the GDP, and it grows whatever happens. And what people even do based on what happened and based on the analysis from the past, predicting how the world will look like somewhere from 2022 up to 2036. Think about it. So now this holy thing is there, and now we have to comply to that. And if you don't comply to that, then probably we are moving into a recession or even a depression, if you don't follow that line. But oops, there we do have this little virus, and that dip is a really big dip. And what is the prediction of that worth? I think nothing. And we have to go back and including a lot of other variables in this growth pattern. And what we did, we ring-fenced it. And that is a whole thing, and nobody can touch it. But if we put that in perspective, then this is a really little sliver of what we are using to measure growth. And measure growth only at the cost of a lot of things that we are doing at the moment in this world. Firstly, the GDP is manic because we were able now to figure out, hey, now all of a sudden we can measure progress. Then we got addicted to that. We came up with all kind of formulas to make it as precise as possible. And today, ladies and gentlemen, it is toxic. If we are not complying to this growth, we have a big, huge problem. But the world is a little bit different. The world is a systemic organism. All kind of variables are applying, and only for the economy there are so many variables that determines what we are doing. And if we don't include it, or if we are not able to have that helicopter view, the holistic view, then we really have a problem. And that is what's happening. Another perspective that we see today in the US, in the USA, but also in Europe with the European Central Bank, we are pumping a lot of money in our society to bail out all kind of packages for companies, and that is up to $6 trillion US. Unbelievably lot of money. The crux of this is that it is about, for the US, about $18,000 per person. $6,800 goes to corporations, and then it will return $1,200 to each citizen. And that is how we are dividing, to help the corporates, but not the people who are really in need for it. So the hidden dynamics is what I call the hidden dynamics of a GDP are despair inequality, fear, degeneration, erosion, greed. More, we want more, more. And exploitation. And in the end, power. And if we go back to that description of economics, that it is a social science, what is social about it? Think about it. So let me just talk a little bit about the pharmaceutical industry. What happens there? We know everywhere in the world that we are paying a lot of money for medication. A lot of money. And as a justification for these expensive drugs, pharmaceutical industries say, well, we have to spend a lot of money in R&D and in testing and in production and in approval processes and in value. The value of what we are doing, that is unbelievable. And new compounds, to find them is unbelievably difficult. And then the patents, you have to pay for that and whatever. But look at this. The existing drugs lack precision. High volumes needed to treat. And now this is a very shocking addition in this slide. If you look at this, then you see those green little characters there is the only person where the drug works. All the reds that you see, that drug is not effective. Let that sink in. So billions, trillions are put in finding new drugs, and it only works in a very little amount of people. That is the justification for drugs. That has to change. And it can be changed because of technology. So scientists figured out in our universe, even not only on our planet, in our universe, that we have about 10 to the power 60 chemical compounds with drug-like features that can be made. And now machine learning algorithms are helping us now to bring that down to a manageable amount of compounds, about 10,000 at the moment. Those are the crucial compounds that we now can make drugs with. So the pharmaceutical industry is ripe for disruption by using new technologies. But it is a little bit tricky here, because the power of the pharmaceutical industry, for instance with patents, they always find a way to or extend the period of the validity of that patent, or what they also can do with a lot of lawyers is expanding the umbrella so that others cannot get in that shadow of the umbrella to build new drugs. That is how it really works. This is the power that we are seeing today. And I believe that with our new technologies, the upcoming technologies, artificial intelligence, but also 3D printing and other technologies, will make that we are now able to develop medications that are drugs that are really made for you, precision medicine. And we can print it while you are sleeping. It can be printed, and every day again. If we trickle down now that idea of the GDP, that it is all predictive and nobody can change that, because that is how we build our society. In a lot of companies, we see that we are still working and operating in that same kind of mindset. Yeah? that we are trying to command and control everything, and the focus is on the output of employees, but not on the input, which is really, really I think, a missed opportunity, because your assets, your intellectual property is in the people who are working for you. And here we are very, very good at, the controlled profit seekers. In the end, it is all about greed. It is all about more. It is all about eroding what we are doing. We are eroding like this caterpillar, eating everything that it finds. We are digging into the earth to get oil, to get coal out of it, to metals, wood, fresh water. But also we are tapping now in the digital world. And the digital world also is very greedy. And we have to find ways how we can get that balance. So how are we going to fix this? That is the big question. And in this conference about circular economies, we have to think differently. We have to fix this. All the damage that we are producing and that we are causing to our planet is massive. It's really massive. So if you are ill as a person, if you are sick, you are going to a doctor, and the first thing that you are trying to do is to figure out what the problem is. Is there a drug? Is there a treatment? Is there whatever to help me to get better? And in the end, with all the wealth that you have, the billions and whatever you have, in the end, it is all about health. If your health is at stake, there is nothing else that you can do to get that better. But here we do have the planet. The planet is sicker than we are. That planet is full of cancer cells. That planet is eroding. And that planet where we have to live on, that planet is getting sicker and sicker and sicker. But it is not like the coronavirus, it is a kind of a very slow process. And that's why we probably are not active enough to do that. And if we see how all the countries and the big power division in the world, how we are acting with each other, we think that we are owning universe. If you look at that little picture there, this is made by the Voyager, 5 billion kilometers out. Turning around, make a picture, and this is the Earth. We are nothing. We are nothing. And at the same time, we are thinking that we are owning the universe. That has to change. Really has to change. We are so short-sighted that if we are continuing to do this, the disasters will be way more than the coronavirus that we see today. How are we getting out of that bubble? And how are we getting into that metamorphosis? How are we moving from linear to exponential? From short-sightedness to overview? From degenerative by nature, how we are working, to regenerative by design. From the onset. Money first. And now it should be purpose first. And that is what I'm trying to talk about. And what I'm trying to explain to you, how important it is. From central to distributed. I will end with that as well. And then from closed to transparent. Because the biggest problem, ladies and gentlemen, that we see today is that we mistrust. There is no trust. But there are some good things going on. A couple of big companies with a total combined worth more than $2 trillion, got together and said, well, all the money that is now pumping into the economy, money that we are trying to build up the economy again after this pandemic, got together and said, well, we have to work differently. We have to make it green. So the big companies like Unilever, Adobe, and a lot more got together, signed a kind of a covenant, and said, well, we cannot do this anymore, what we did so far. And we have to prioritize that we are moving towards a green economy. And everybody has to make plans to comply to it. And that is a very, very good signal. But we know that in the meantime, our immune system of the economy, immune system of corporates, immune system of governments are kicking in immediately. The immune system of economists. No, we cannot do that. Who is going to pay for that? No way. And that's illegal because this is what we have written, that is what we agreed. And now you cannot change that anymore. That is what we call the immune system kicks in. So, what are we going to do with all that stuff? It is overwhelming. And can you change it? So what are we going to do now? Well, what we see is that we have to change. That is what I said all the time. And the changes have to come, or are coming, always from outside a certain area. Coming from outside a certain area, unexpectedly. And the same counts for economics. The change will come from outside the domain of economics. Because the way we build up the economy, we cannot change that with the same way of thinking. What Einstein said, we cannot solve the problems with the same thinking we used when we created the problems. And let that sink in a moment. We see so many new ideas coming up from economists that are not making any sense, because the thing that people try to build a theory around is always within the confines of what people say this is our economy, but probably it is not. So we have to think differently. And one of the neat things that I will talk about now is the first paradigm, and then I will tie it together after the fourth paradigm. The first is the donut model, and I really like that donut model because it brings the things very close to us. Even in our economy, we are outsourcing pollution. We are outsourcing CO2 because in certain countries in the world, they are not producing that much. So what we are doing, we are selling it to them. Okay, how are you going to do that? Are you now blowing the CO2 there, or with a big fan, or whatever? It is a stupid way if you think about it. And then the companies that are responsible for that have to pay the bill as well. But they can put it on the balance sheet and probably have to pay less taxes. So the donut model gives it, and I saw it in other presentations as well in the circular economy, is on the inside of the donut, that is where we see the social foundation. So Kate Rafford built this model, and I really like it. There are all the let's say the basics of living in a good health, living in a good well-being, if you will. So water, food, health, etc. The social foundation. Whereas on the other hand, there is everything that surrounds it. That is our environment, climate, um, uh, oceans, fresh water, etc. And we are, in the overshoot, we are eroding that. And in the inside, at the same time, we are building inequality because of the wealth distribution in our world. She built even nice things like this, that people are, that she made it for people tangible. If you are talking about bringing that balance in the society or in a city, Amsterdam, for instance, the city Amsterdam is using this model to bring that kind of balance in this city. What I said just before is that there is a shortfall in that social foundation. A lot of people are living in fear. A lot of people are hungry. A lot of people don't have access to the basics that we in the developed country do have access to. Simply to the internet or fresh water. It's not there. Whereas in the overshoot, we are just working and working and working to make the world really, really bad at the moment. The climate change is now pretty obvious. However, the coronavirus showed us that if the companies are not working anymore, there is no chimneys smoking everywhere around the world, that the pollution is decreasing dramatically. So that could be used now as an example. Well, if you do it a little bit less, or, well, sometimes we are shutting the factories down, then it will save, then it will save our planet, then it will solve by itself. You see, climate change, we can control it. I bet you that is going to happen. But also land conversion, or one of the other things that is really bad is biodiversity. The biodiversity is shrinking, is decreasing as well. And what we are doing, based on our greed, based on the more and more and more that we want, we need 3 planets to meet our greedy needs. 3 planets. So how are we going to do that? So we have to think differently about economy. And that means that we have to change the goal. And I would say, no, we have to build a purpose. And that 70 years fixation on the GDP has to change. Simply. Stop with it tomorrow. But people fall in a big hole because we organize everything around it. And we have to see the big picture and not that sliver of the GDP that I just showed, that I just demonstrated. And nurture human nature. That's the only thing that we have. There is nothing else that we have. And try to think in systems and not only in parts of a system. Designed to distribute and not making things all central. And create to regenerate and not to degenerate. And be agnostic about growth. The second one is probably not that well known, and that is abundance and deflation. So we see a lot, and I think this will going to increase, that we see a polarization of inflation and deflation. Our current economy, our current society is built on inflation. Whereas the technology is working, is showing deflation. And I will give some examples about it. At the moment, over the last 2 decades, we pumped over 250 trillion US dollars in our economies. 250 million trillion debt to keep an economy worldwide of 80 trillion afloat. What are we doing with that gap? What are we doing with the difference? So what we are doing, we are very, very good in repairing the balloon so that we can inflate it again. But what we see at the same time, and especially when we are now entering the era of exponential technologies, that the deflation will kick in quickly. So deflation is in general is a reduction of the prices that we are paying for something. Digital technology is inherently deflationary because the marginal costs are getting close to zero. It is very easy for Airbnb to add a new room to their portfolio. If Marriott wants to do that, they have to build a new hotel. That's a little bit different. A lot of costs, whereas what Airbnb is doing is probably nothing. And we are now witnessing the exponential wave of deflation. We can wait for that. And I think that will lead to a big, huge tension. The other thing is that digital technology will add new information, new devices, new whatever that we can use to ease our life, to make, let's say, to add new insights to our society, bringing that into the abundant world that we can use now practically for free. And everywhere where that is going to happen will have a deflationary effect on our economy. And a lot of companies, a lot of governments are trying to prevent us from that. So in what I said, the new system of governments and politicians will really going to kick in here and trying to slow that down. But technology grows, and that does not stop. Because what you discover, you cannot de-discover. And a lot of exponential technologies are out, and they are all on an exponential growth curve. And all those technologies are powered, are fueled by the increase of computational power. But what we also see is that more and more AI will be embedded in these technologies. And all those technologies are also connected and going to converge. And here we see a line that Peter Diamandis, a growth curve that Peter Diamandis developed. So everything that we see, that we try to develop, will be digitized. And once we are digitizing, there will be a moment, and that can be after a couple of years, it can be some 10 years or whatever, but then when it is a really good solution, it hits the market and it has a disruptive effect. But after that, because it is scalable, really scalable, it will demonetize. It will be less and less costly. And that is where the deflation kicks in. And once that happens, it goes on, and it becomes available for everybody. That is what we call the democratization. And what we see more and more is that the new solutions, the new purpose-driven organizations are somehow focusing on the SDGs that we see, the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. And those are the climate change and poverty and education and healthcare. And that is where we have to focus on. That is where our new economy should focus on. That is what the Unilevers, the Adobes are working on. And here we see an example of what that deflation means. And that is in the world of the energy. Solar energy, wind energy is deflating the energy sector because it's cheaper at the moment than fossil energy, way cheaper. And it is still declining. But what happens at the same time is that the world energy outlook, they asked experts what their opinion is about the growth of alternative or green energy. And you see on the right hand, all those lines are horizontal over a period of 20 and even more years ahead. Those experts are wrong, because the black arrow that is almost vertical is the real growth of solar energy in this case. And wind energy, put it in that same arrow, it's the same way. So what this means is that companies, organizations, governments are building their predictions, their strategies on the horizontal lines and don't see the vertical line that is really happening. And at the moment, with the solar energy and wind energy, we are already at a 7% that can be covered in the demand. And people say to me, 7%, that's nothing. What are you talking about? Well, if you see and if you know Moore's law, it only needs 5-6 doublings and we are at 100%. So probably in this decade, solar energy and wind energy together is probably for free. And here is another example of deflation. 20 years ago, you paid probably for all those things $1 million US. And today, it's all in your pocket in your phone, in your smartphone. That's an example of deflation. Or another example of deflation is the decrease in price, even faster than Moore's law, of the DNA sequencing. And this comes available for hospitals, for the medical world, so that we can now find quicker than ever before new drugs or drugs that are really working on you, so that the green amounts in that earlier slide will increase. Local motors is another example of deflation. So the car companies, it cost them about $3 billion to build a new car. Local Motors does it for $3 billion, etc. So at the end of the day, how can you compete as a traditional company with companies who are completely digitized? It is not possible anymore. But still, in the immune system, we still have a desire to run around with combustion cars and at way too high costs, and to please the oil industry, etc. The other thing is where we see a deflation, and now it's becoming tricky, is in the production chain. So a lot of robots will take over the work of human beings at lower costs, and of course they are costing energy. But what are we going to do? In China, they are now implementing these robots massively in the factories, and already a lot of people have been laid off. But it goes further, the story about deflation. We are also already able to print diamonds and 3D print diamonds. So if that is happening, what does that mean for the jewelry industry? A valuable stone is probably deflating, getting cheaper, because the 3D printers are doing it probably better and way cheaper. Cultured meat is another one. So that will hit massively agriculture. So just a couple of cells from the muscle of a healthy cow, and we can culture meat. A couple of cells will has the capability to produce about 10 tons of meat, better meat than what you get now. That means that we don't need to slaughter animals, that we don't need to cut woods to make room for these cows. It's not needed. It is slaughtering animals for meat is as archaic as slaughtering whales for oil. That's how we have to think, people. But we also have to have a caveat. And that is that technology is conceived today as a kind of solutionism. What does that mean? Is that we think that we now can change and that we now can solve all the problems with technology. So, well, let's sit back because the technology will figure that out. No, we have to act now. Technology is not able to fix all the flaws that we created as human beings. The third paradigm that I will talk about is holism and hierarchy of needs that has been developed by Maslow, but he did not finish it. And Scott Kaufman, he dug into the work of Maslow, and what he figured out is that Maslow had a lot of unfinished work, and he brought it together in a kind of new model. And he is convinced also what he is seeing around, not only what Maslow was talking about, but that we people have a lot of extraordinary creativity. We are humanitarians. We are spiritual. And because we are focusing on everything around us. And what we did so far in our economy, in our world, is that we brought it down to very narrow slices. Our education is built on very narrow slices. Education is part of those areas that can be disrupted massively. We see the hierarchy of needs that Maslow built. Well, we build in here Wi-Fi because that is also a kind of a basic need today. But I also said, well, it is well-being, interconnectivity, freedom, and inclusiveness. So here is the model that Scott Kaufman built. And he came up with a kind of the same thing, but the sequence is a little bit different. I'm not going too deep into that, we don't have time for that. But on the top, that is the purpose, opposed to the self-actualization, which is a little difficult concept. And purpose is a little bit easier to work with. But you see on the top, the sail of that boat, if you will, that is growth capacity. But you only can do that if the security, the boat itself, is stable enough. So that we can have some side winds. And then the last paradigm that I would like to talk about, if the slide is going there, is inclusive, massive, transformative purpose. So having a purpose, a personal purpose in life and in a company, if you have that, then your path on the journey clears really up. And it is based on the work that Salim Ismail did in his study together with Yuri van Keest about exponential organizations. They all have a purpose. And we are talking about even a massive transformative purpose. And what does that mean? A massive transformative purpose. That means that your unit of action is the planet and even beyond the planet, the universe. That is our unit of action today, massive. That means that in the work that you are doing, that massive character, that massive potential should be in the work that you are doing in a good way. And it should be transformative. The things that we are doing today and created a mess, to be very cautious, has to be transformed. And that purpose is the tailwind. And what I added into that is the inclusiveness. And inclusiveness is that it should be holistic by design. That means that we also include the people who are shortfalling, that we take care of our planet, that we are taking care of each other, and that it is not only a game that we are playing for a couple of people in this society. So what we see here is that the endless balance in the inclusive MTP is the wave, the DNA between quality and quantity. And that is what I call the IMTP. And if we go to our own company, XonentialEQ, our massive, transformative, inclusive, massive, transformative purpose is transforming humanity to make a difference. Is that too much? I think not. Even if you are transforming humanity on a small scale, then you are contributing to that new world. And now we are going to converge all those 4 paradigms in a new model. And I hope that you like this model. It is a model that I created based on these paradigms. So we see, if it builds up, a triangle. And in that triangle, we see the 3 components. The social foundation of the donut, call it the donut, the abundance and the deflation, and on the top we see consciousness and collective intelligence, purpose, the purpose of us people. And we can get to that level by education, by helping children to grow up in a way that they are conscious about what is going on around us. And the balance of social foundation and the abundance and deflation has to be in balance. And that is easier to do if you include the social foundation as well as the overshoot that I just mentioned. And the abundance of the deflation makes it possible that all the things that we are producing, all the things that we are developing, are now available for everybody. Everybody can have access to those things that we are developing. And that is the way where we have to go. And if you look at this triangle, and then at the top you see left and right brain. The left brain is more the mathematical way of thinking. And that is what I would like to put in the responsibility area of the abundance and deflation. Because the technology that we are developing has the potential to become toxic as well. That we are completely adoring the technology in the beginning, but in the end the technology will take it over. Think about AI. Think about machine learning. Think about robots that are completely autonomous. How are we going to deal with it? How far are we going? Stuart Russell wrote a fantastic book, Human Compatible, talking about how are we going to control AI. Because if AI is not in control, it is going to control us. And as Putin said, well, that country who will adopt and who will lead the world in AI will lead the entire world. But here is my point to Putin, is if that would be the case, then AI will control you as well. Because you are not able, and nobody is able to control AI in the long run. And it goes really fast. So then in the middle of this triangle, you see now the IMTP and the balance between quality and quantity. And that is the DNA of this whole system. On the right hand, we see the sustainability driven by the social foundation of the donut, creating and trying to keep the diversity in our society, in our nature. And on the other hand, the dynamics that we can use by the technology. And everything, ladies and gentlemen, revolves around trust. The future is about trust. And that's why I put it at the top of this triangle. That is trust. And how are we creating trust in our society? That is a big, huge question. But there are very promising developments on the way to help us to realize that. And one of the activities that we are doing in our ecosystem or in our community, the EXO community, is focusing on cities, is focusing on corporates, and is focusing on autonomous ecosystems. What does that mean? Is that we think that city-states are the best way to change our society. We cannot do that on governmental level. There are too many regulations. There are too many people involved. If you do that on a city base, then probably you can change it. And we demonstrated that with several cities around the world. In Colombia and in the US, in Miami, we worked on changing parts of the city. Corporates, we have a lot of corporates that we helped to that exponential transformation. And once you do that and help the companies to build their MTPs, and the MTPs or IMTPs connected to make the world a better place to live, then automatically people are thinking in a different way of how to nurture our nature. That is by design. And autonomous ecosystem is a next level, and that can be created by, for instance, the implementation and the use of blockchain technology, including the building of micro economies, using their own cryptocurrencies, that we don't need the central banks who are just taking the money from whoever, and they are in control about how the money flows in our society. That time will be over soon. If blockchain technology is really going to mature, including the monetary systems underneath that or running on that blockchain, I think a lot of things are going to change. And can we change? I'm absolutely sure that we can change. Once that community is growing and we all are on the same page in this kind of thinking, and it is not hard to understand that how we did it so far, how we got here will not get us there. How we got here is not really good. My children and the children of my children are probably not very pleased with what we did. And a lot of those people in that age, the millennials, they say, please go out of the way and let us take it over and clean. And especially we need women in leadership roles, because women are simply thinking differently. The new economists of the world with new breakthrough ideas are all women. Think about it. Because they are thinking more holistically than what our males are doing over the last decades. So this is, of course, not something that I came up all by myself, but these are a couple of sources that I used to build up these ideas, to make the connections, existing connections, but if you bring them in a new constellation, you can come up with really interesting things. And some of them are directly from the science of, let's say, economy, but a lot of them are not. And I hope, and sincerely hope, that we can change our GDP in a global distributed purpose. That is the abbreviation of the future of GDPs. Global distributed purpose. And to conclude, the way we organize our economy does not work. We see that over and over and over again. So when alternatives, like I was talking to you about today, are converging, we should use them. And it can lead to amazing new things. We are not going to fight, or I'm not going to fight existing systems, but I would like to transform them. And inclusive, regenerative business by design is the way where we have to go. That is the work actually what we are doing with the corporates that we are helping to transform exponentially. And the balance between quality and quantity is probably the new IMTP, and I think it is the DNA of the next economy. And then people say, well, that's utopia. But isn't it utopian to continue what we are doing and thinking that it will change, that it will resolve by itself, by doing what we still do? So we have to change that kind of thinking. And I'm echoing here Steve Jobs by saying it's better to be a pirate than to join the Navy. And I'm one of those pirates. Hopefully we have some time for Q&A, but thank you for your time. Sorry for the delays, it distracted me as well, because I can see on my other screen the delay, and it's very, very difficult to synchronize with that. Thank you very much.